Hello there, I'm Big Alias, Furiosa of the Mad Max saga. Unfortunately, a bit of a tenuous term at the moment, given that this film actually has sort of underperformed in the box office. So it's kind of interesting, a little bit funny, and kind of very sad when a film sort of bigs itself up as part of a saga and then underperforms in the box office. And unfortunately, that's what's happened here. So I went to this film with two other people. I'm going to get this straight out of the way. They came out of the cinema very disappointed. Well, quite disappointed. And I came out relatively disappointed. But it's kind of understandable. I mean, the first film, Mad Max Fury Road, was like this exceptional, almost landmark moment in cinema. It's to this day one of the greatest action films of all time, an absolute masterpiece, and following that up was always going to be difficult. However, I definitely got the sense that George Miller didn't really try to make something as good as what he previously made here, and that seems odd to me. Like, it's definitely not up to the standard. I'll say that right now, it's not up to the standard of the first film. But I don't ever get the sense that he was trying to make something that was up to the standard of the first film. It's a very different experience. And yeah, like I said, there's this constant sense that it was not supposed to be as good an experience as the first one. But it's a very different experience. The pacing is vastly different. The action is a little less intense. It's a lot more story focused than it is sort of action focused. And unfortunately, I'm very, very disappointed to report the huge poppy, over-the-top sense of high contrast is not here. The sand is nowhere near as orange as it was in the first film, and that was a big part of it. I mean, I'm saying it as though, like, you know, you may hear this and go, well, that's ridiculous, what a ridiculous complaint, but that was part of it. That was part of the Mad Max experience, and it's just not here. It's a lot more muted in terms of color, and I think that's overall, like, the overall sentiment of the film is that it feels a lot more muted than the first one. The first one was allowed to just be wild and boisterous and crazy, whereas this one, it feels as though George Miller was, as weird as it sounds, trying to do more, trying to sort of achieve more story-wise. And in doing so, it becomes a little bit less interesting. And you sacrifice a lot that you got in the first film. So in order to create a cohesive story, you have to take more time to, like, let character emotions and feelings and dialogue and what have you sink in, and that happens to the detriment of the film. It feels longer. I think we all agree that it felt like a longer experience, and bizarrely, I think, you know, this is why I opened with the notion that George Miller isn't trying to achieve as good a film here, because some of the issues are just bizarre, and, like, the pacing was masterful in the first film, and it just feels so weird to me that I kind of didn't think the pacing was very good here. And it feels so often weird that 9 years later, George Miller can go from some of the best pacing I've ever seen in a film to, honestly, pacing that wasn't that great. And it's not just because it's an overly long film. It's 2.5 hours. But, I mean, Dune was just as long, and, you know, that captivated me the entire time. Dune 2. Oppenheimer was 3 hours long, and I wanted more. This, you do sort of fill the runtime a little bit, which is a shame, really, because, to be quite honest with you, personally speaking, I thought it was a good film. I know I'm opening by bad-mouthing a lot, but I have to, like, these were my immediate thoughts coming away from the film, were that it just was nowhere near the level of Fury Road. But overall, I do think it was a good movie. In fact, I think it was a very good film. I love George Miller's sort of no shot is too extreme style of filmmaking. I absolutely love that. Almost half of this film is just shots that would, you know, serve as a trailer. But I love that. I think that's awesome. I think I kind of feel like it's what Snyder wants to do, but can never sort of achieve. Some of these shots are so over the top and extreme, and I love them to death. I love the way that he whips the camera around, and, you know, no amount of whiplash on the tracking on the tracking arm is too much. You know, it just, he flings the camera around. Everything is, like, exaggerated with a harsh zoom in, or, you know, something like that. At times you expect the soundtrack to go like dun 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 dun, because it's so overt and over the top, and it just doesn't hold back you know, in terms of that. It's so crazy. There's a shot from the trailer that is in the film where Furiosa is just like surrounded by fire, sort of pinned up against a wall. There's just like, there is no way you got away with this shot. And he really did. I mean, it's such a beautiful film. It is a lot more muted, like I said. But I do think that cinematography-wise, this is an exceptional film. I also think the story's great, you know, full of revenge. It's very much a revenge plot. I think Anya Taylor-Johnson was great. I think she could have been better, but was still great. And I don't think she was given much to work with. I think we all agreed on that. Hemsworth was really good. It's nice to see Hemsworth finally in a role where he gets to do like these monologues and, you know, something that he gets to sort of chew the scenery on. And I think he does a very good job of it. Hemsworth was very good here. You know, seeing him in things like Thor and Extraction, you don't really get to see him use his acting chops very much. And he uses them to their fullest here, and they're very good. His character is very believable, and you don't like him. You're not supposed to, and you don't. I love that there's a sense of like, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a sense that like he's being stalked, and it's this like cat and mouse fight, you know, that finally crescendos at the end. And I think that's very good. There's not too much of like a overall presence that this is a prequel. It's definitely a prequel. It 100% is a prequel. But it doesn't sort of like keep reaffirming that, and I think I like that. It does just feel like another story in that universe, so that's good. So overall it is a very good experience, and you will feel like the hardship and the sense of revenge that Furiosa has, and I do think it's a very good performance, and I do think it's a very good character. I think all of the characters are great, honestly, and I love how over the top it is, and all of that is fantastic for me. So it is a great film, but it just has like this looming issue where you are going to constantly compare it to Fury Road, which is an exceptionally high bar. Like I said, it's one of the greatest action films of all time. That would be a 10 out of 10 for me. But it's hard not to compare them. You know, it's the same with any film or any franchise, any sequel. You're going to compare it to the previous one. And here that bar is so high, and you don't get the sense that they're trying to reach that exceptionally high bar. But it's still a fantastic film. So let's run it through the scorer. So that's the score. I think it's fair, and it's a good score, and it's a great film. So would I recommend it? Yeah, I would recommend it. Be prepared for a long film. Have some coffee maybe before you go in. But yeah, I would recommend the film. Anyway, so those are my thoughts, and I'll see everyone later.
The PlayStation's only $149, and you can also get leading titles.